Good morning, everybody. My name is Mathias. The topic we have before us this morning is tools associated with social studies and data gathering in environmental and social impact assessment. Before we go forward, let's look at a basic definition of social studies. As we all know, social studies is one subject we all did in our foundation years in school, and a lot of definitions abound. Some have defined social studies as the study of people and their society. Some have defined it as the study of history, people or the society, the study of people in relation to each other and to their world. Now, looking at social studies, it's an interdisciplinary subject that draws upon history, geography, ecology, economics, law, philosophy, and a lot of other social science disciplines. With that in mind, we'll be going straight to the topic before us this morning and looking at the tools associated with these studies and data gathering in environmental and social impact assessments. Let us first of all understand what environmental and social impact assessment is all about. Now, what is environmental and social impact assessment? It's a process for predicting and assessing the potential environmental and social impacts of a proposed project by evaluating alternatives and designing appropriate mitigation, management, and monitoring measures. Now, it is called environmental and social impact assessment, and it can be subdivided into two, having the environmental impact assessment and the social impact assessment. For the topic before us this morning, which is tools associated with social studies, we will be concentrating our discussion more on the social impact assessment. Now, what is social impact assessment? This is the process of identifying and managing the social impacts of projects. It can also be applied to policies, plans, and programs. Now, SIA, which is social impact assessment, is used to predict and mitigate negative impacts and identify opportunities to enhance benefits for local communities and broader society. Now, central to the principle and practice of social impact assessment is the involvement of the affected communities and other stakeholders in the process. Now, looking at affected communities, taking the concept of social studies, the communities are made up of people and the society. Now, the social studies says people in relation to their society. There comes in the affected communities and other stakeholders in the process. Now, SIA should inform decision making by governments and companies from the early stage of any project. Now, why is social impact assessment important? Why is this very important? It's an important tool to assess the social, economic, and cultural impact of proposed project activities on indigenous communities. And when we mean indigenous communities, we mean a community where such projects are to be sited. Now, an SIA identifies potential impacts on indigenous titled lands and territories of customary resource use. As such, it helps to avoid potential negative impact on critical natural resources, such as water and forests, as well as impact on cultural resources, such as sacred sites. Now, these are very, very important components that are parts of the social life of man, and in extent, the social life of the community. Now, an SIA process also helps to identify ways that these indigenous communities could benefit from proposed developmental projects. Now, for example, through infrastructural development, job creation, or support for traditional enterprise, and should enable residents of that community to shape the way the development moves forward. So in a nutshell, SIA is a very vital tool in the entire environmental and social impact assessment. Now we go straight to the tools, which is our key topic for today, the social impact assessment tools and methods. Now there are very many tools used in information or data collection for social impact assessment. Now one of it is the analytical tool. And under the analytical tool, we have the stakeholder analysis. Now the stakeholder analysis, this is an entry point to SIA and participatory work. Now, it addresses strategic questions like who are the key stakeholders. It also asks questions as what are their interests? These stakeholders, what are their interests in the project or the policies? Now, what is the power differentials between these stakeholders to enable us to know who are the key stakeholders and know how to break down the form of discussion or interaction or interviews you're going to conduct in such society. Now, this information that is contained for this stakeholder analysis helps to identify the institutions and relations which, if ignored, can have negative influence on the entire process of the project. Now, the second is the gender analysis. When we talk about gender analysis, we are focusing on understanding and documenting the differences in gender roles, their activities, their needs and opportunities in a given context. Now, this highlights the roles and behaviors of men and women in such society. Now, these attributes vary across culture, class, ethnicity, income, education, and time. Like our country, for example, if you have to look at the gender analysis, what is obtainable in the northern part of Nigeria is not what's obtainable in other parts of the country. In some places, the women have a right to being called as part of a team of discussants. But in some other places in the country, such opportunities or privileges are not so granted. Now, the third we're looking at under analytical tool is the secondary data review. Now, the secondary data review is a review of previous information, as previous work earlier conducted in such areas. Now, this helps us to identify experts, institutions, and identify a lot of, or helps us streamline the mode with which we will be working and carrying out our studies. The second is the consultation method. Here we're looking at beneficiary access. And when we talk about beneficiary access, it's a systematic investigation of the perception. Now, the perception is key here. The perception of a sample of beneficiaries and other stakeholders to ensure that their concerns are heard and incorporated into project and policy formulation. The perception of beneficiaries and stakeholders. Now, stakeholders, we have various categories of stakeholders. There are some who are affected. There are some who are not affected. We have the impacted and we have the non-impacted. Now, when we talk about beneficiaries now, we're breaking them down into various sectors. Now, the purpose for carrying out this assessment is to undertake systematic listening, which gives voice to poor and other hard-to-reach beneficiaries. Now, these are the impacted beneficiaries. Now, it helps highlighting constraints to beneficiary participation. It helps you to know if these people will have access to airing their views or not. Now, it also helps to obtain feedback on interventions. Let's move forward. The third is looking at the observation and interview tools. Under this, we have the participant field observation. And when we talk about the participant field of observation, it's a field technique used by scientists, especially social scientists, to collect qualitative data and to develop in-depth understanding of people's motivation. Now, it's based on you as a scientist going out to the field, looking, listening, asking questions. Now, keeping detailed field notes, it's very paramount. Now, observation and analysis are supplemented by desk review. Now, after you go out there, collect your data, you supplement it with desk review. And when we do this, it helps us filter a lot of things. Now, the second is semi-structured interviews. Semi-structured interviews, I think interview, in a nutshell, is essentially a structured conversation where one participant asks questions and the other provides the answer. Now, in a common word, interview refers to one-on-one discussion. Now, interview, in a nutshell, it's more like a low-cost, rapid method for gathering information from individuals or small group. Now, they are partially structured by a written guide to ensure that they are focused on the issue at hand. And it helps keep the conversation, or allows the conversant, that's the person asking the question and the person answering, to have a good conversation. That is what this does. Now, the next is focus group discussion. We're talking about focused group discussion. What is focused group discussion? Now, focus group discussion, there are rapid ways to collect comparative data from a variety of stakeholders. Now, we call them focus group because we have them in various phases. We have them in various types. We heard the last time we were talking about the impacted and the non-impacted. There are some who has influence on the project. There are some who do not have influence on the project. So, but when we have focus group discussion, it gives us a way to compare, gather enough data, and you compare this data together. Now, these are brief meetings, usually 1 to 2 hours, with very many potential users. Now, it helps to address particular concerns. Maybe when you go out for your scoping, you observe some things. When you carry out this focus group discussion, it helps you to address some of these concerns. It clarifies a lot of things for you. It builds community consensus about the implementation of the project. Now, it also helps you to cross-check information with a large number of people. That is what focus group discussion does. Now, this is a very good way to gather people together from similar background and experiences and discuss specific topics with them. Now, the next we're looking at is key informant interview. And what is key informant interview? These are qualitative, in-depth interview with people who know what is going on in the community. That's why it's called key informant interviews. And when you talk about key informant interviews, you're looking at people like in the community, you're looking at people like the traditional ruler, you're looking at people like the local government chairperson, you're looking at chairmen of maybe social associations within the community. Now, basically, key informant interview involves basically community leaders, professionals, and those who have a first-hand knowledge about the community and possibly about the proposed project that is being considered in the locality. Now, the last we're looking at under this is the village meeting. Well, we call it village meeting in our own context because many a times when massive projects are to be carried out, they are mostly done in rural areas. So the reason for village meeting. Now, village meeting allows the local people to describe their problems, outline their priorities and aspirations. Now, this avenue can be used to initiate collaborative planning and to periodically share and verify information gathered from small groups of individuals and others. Now, looking at this involves clearly you being out on the field and carrying out all these procedures. Now, we also have the computer-assisted personal interviewing, called CAPI. The world as we have it today is making things easy, and we're trying to go paperless, trying to work mostly with electronics. And so this had come up, the computer-assisted personal interviewing. Now, it's an interviewing technique in which the respondent or interviewer uses an electronic device to answer questions. Now, how is this done? It is done by you, the interviewer, with your device, walking up to the field, meeting your respondents. Instead of writing, you are there with an electronic device, probably an iPad, probably a phone, and you are there asking these questions and entering your answers. Now, what are the good qualities of this CAPI? Now, it's a face-to-face personal interviewing mode, now in which a handheld device displays the question on the screen. The interviewer obtains the response of the respondent and feeds it into the device. Now, the second is it brings all survey components, such as questionnaire design, managing, supervising, interviewing, data entry, validation into one look. Now, with your device. Now, looking at this, comparing this part with going out with your questionnaires, your printed questionnaires. Maybe you are to interview, say 200 persons with your questionnaire, giving them, distributing the questionnaires. I mean, at the end of the day, you'll be coming up with the bulky papers. But with your device, you have all these questions into one point, just your small device. Now, CAPI technology is an excellent example of Internet of Things. Improvement and update based on users' requirements and survey experience. Depends on what you want to do. You configure it to your standard. Now, what are the types of CAPI? Types of CAPI we have Survey CTO, we have the ODK, which is Open Data Kit, we have Survey Solution, we have Zoho Survey, we have Go Survey, we have Survey Pro. We have a lot of them. Some of these are used for environmental studies, like what we are discussing here today, environmental and social impact assessment. Some are used for market research purposes. Some are used for client-based analysis. And a lot. So we have a lot of this survey softwares. Now, what are the advantages of this survey softwares? Now, one of the advantages is the face-to-face setting allows the interviewer to capture verbal and non-verbal feedbacks. Now, if somebody you are interviewing as a social scientist is not happy with the project, and maybe when you start discussing with the person, he tries to play and make you feel he's comfortable, but his expression will tell a lot. Now, the verbal feedback is him telling you, okay, yes, we like the project, but his non-verbal feedback is his facial expression, frowning. Maybe take, for example, an extractive project. Maybe people coming in to carry out a project like coal mining or manganese mining, and you're encroaching into his farm. He'll be losing his land. He'll be losing a lot of things. Yes, the general public are okay with it, so he will have to conform with them and say, okay, fine, yes. But his expression, his facial expression will tell. That's one of the advantages. But if you had given the paper questionnaire, he just sticks away and returns without you observing this. Now, personal interviewing allows for interviews of longer duration, maybe interview of 45 minutes or more. Why this is so is because For those who have more questions to ask, there are rooms for you to discuss while conducting your interview. And maybe if there are one or two information that is not captured in your questionnaire, in your designed questionnaire, this gives you a room to add it to the questionnaire. So many a times your discussion might take a longer time or it might take a shorter time. If the discussion is interesting, meaningful, and very productive, and you see the vital and key information, the information can be prolonged. But if it was the paper-based questionnaire, it's just to be, you just tick and submit without you having all this in perspective. Now, the next is modern devices can record audio feedback from respondents, track GPS location, and allow pictures to be taken of the interview, thus adding to the quality of the data. Now, this is one very key advantage. If you are with your survey CTO, assuming in your iPad, using it to go conduct an interview, if your respondent has a lot of things to express, you can record it. You can record it. If you really want to identify where such question was asked or where some observations were made, you can track it with your GPS. The device will be GPS enabled. You can track it and record your GPS location. And you can also take pictures to identify the face of the person, your respondent, if allowed. Now, all this will help you improve the quality of your data, because all this will be put together to give you a quality social impact assessment data. Now, there is no need to transcribe the results into a computer form. The computer program can be constructed so as to place the results directly in formats that can be read by statistical analysis program like SPSS, statistical program for social scientists. Now, all you need to do once you enter them is to convert straight. But when you have your data, we are not disputing the fact that the paper-based questionnaire is not acceptable. They are very, very important. Every aspect of the tools for socioeconomic analysis, data gathering, are very important. There are places you will find yourself where using this will not be possible. You come up with your paper-based questionnaire. There are places where you find enlightened individuals who want to discuss with you, not just write. This comes into play. So they are very important in all areas. Now, the presence of an interviewer helps when probing for spontaneous awareness of certain topics. Like I said earlier, when new topics arises during your course of discussion, you can quickly bring them in. Now, the interviewer can verify that the respondent answering the question is the person that needs to be interviewed. Now, in this case, assuming you are going to see a key informant. Now, people can portray themselves with titles, claim what they are not. Now, in your course of interviewing, there are ways you can identify these persons. So that's why you get to understand, or verify the respondents, who he or she actually is. Now, any changes in the structure of the questionnaire can be instantly reflected on the interviewer's device, including updates. Like we said earlier, any changes. Maybe you are trying to ask the age range of someone, and the maximum you have in your device is saying 50 to 65. And the person you are discussing with is about 85. What will you do? Changes can be made. You quickly edit and you add the range. It comes in there. Now, assignments can be added over the air. No need for enumerators to return to headquarters. Now, this simply means, take a close example, like Richflood. It means scientists are sent out for research to gather data. Now, what happens? Maybe along the line, one or two information had to be added to the questionnaire. You don't need to come back. All you need to do is just a phone call away. And such information will be communicated to those on the field. And that's the simplicity with which this comes with. Now, its distinctive attributes support any type of survey. Now, it can be used for all forms of survey. Like we said earlier, we have the ODK, we have the survey CTO, they can be used for different forms of survey. Now, interviews can be done on a tablet or a smartphone, so you don't necessarily need to carry a laptop because it's computer assisted. You don't need to carry a laptop. We have smartphones these days, which are very handy, so that can be used for it. Now, the headquarters can get real time. Okay, good. In areas where you have connectivity, where you usually have access to connectivity, your information your data, as you are gathering them, you can be uploading them immediately. Someone who is miles away, kilometers away, will be receiving the data and analyzing the data at real time. Those are the importance of this. But like I said earlier, because of this doesn't mean we have to discard the paper-based. No, they are both handy. They come in and are very useful at various times. Now, the uses of these tools we just discussed. Now, these EIS survey tools provide rich functionality for planning, design, and implementation of survey and suitable for all types of survey. Now, it can be these whole tools from the use of our analytical tools, the use of other tools we earlier discussed. That's the stakeholder analysis, the gender analysis, the beneficiary assessments, participant field observations, the focus group discussions, key informant interviews. They can all be used and they are also suitable for all types of survey. Surveys like household income and consumption surveys, labor force survey, health survey, literacy survey, gender survey, and even market research. Now, if we look at these four are part of social impact assessments, which will be used for EIA. Now, this is for business assessment. So these tools are open tools that can be used for all forms of survey. Now, the SIA in itself, the social impact assessment in itself, why these tools are so important is because the areas to be covered when carrying out your social impact assessment is broad, so broad. And that is why in environmental and social impact assessment is divided into environmental impact and social impact. Now, looking at the areas to be covered for the social impact, we have regulatory frameworks. Now, we talked about, one of the tools we looked at was using information, already existing information. I don't know if you still remember that. Using previously written reports. Now that we have to, regulatory framework, these are part of what we have to look at when talking about SIA. Now there is some, I think in mining, there is a legislation that says the community culture, I think, yes, the culture, sacred sites should not be encroached. And if they have to be encroached, then they have to do what they call Resettlement Action Plan. Now, there's a legislation that covers that. These are what helps. Because when you see some of these things in your course of analysis, in your course of data gathering, you'll be able to identify a lot of areas which will help you to invoke some of these regulatory frameworks. Now, administrative division and governance structure. When you get into a place, a social setting, you have to understand the administrative structure that is in existence in that place. Some of these tools are what we use for this. Now, population and demography. Understanding the gender, the age distribution, the ethnicity, migration trend, religion, and vulnerable groups. The tools, our socio-economic tools, helps us to understand this. Gender distribution, are there more males than female? Are there more aged than young ones? The ethnicity, are there more of a particular tribe than the others? Now, migration trend, are the youths migrating to other places in search of greener pastures? Or the community on its own, is it attracting people? Is it outward migration or inward migration?